A less than honorable discharge can deny a veteran of their benefits and follow them throughout life, making opportunities in the civilian world harder to find. Stay with us as we discuss discharge upgrades, restored honor. Thanks for tuning in to Veterans Voices. I'm Nathan Johnson. Tonight, we are talking about discharge upgrades. If you want to be part of the conversation, call us right now, 925-313-1170, or send us a message through Facebook at Veterans Voices 1, or email us, veteransvoices@ContraCostaTV.org. We will be having an in-depth discussion about the need and the process for upgrading a veteran's discharge status. First, I want to welcome Shannon Fitzpatrick and Marine veteran Atef Latif to the show. Thank you both for coming here, and you have stories, lots to share in regards to your personal experiences of how a discharge status or discharge narrative has affected your life. But before we get started into that story, can you just real quickly give us just an introduction?
I'm Shannon Fitzpatrick, and I am the girlfriend of Marine combat veteran Sean Michael Cox, who died in March of this year.
Hi, my name is Atef Latif. I served in the Marine Corps from 2000 through 2005. And I had a negative discharge. I had a bad conduct discharge at the Marine Corps, and I've had it upgraded through the VA and in the process of having it upgraded through the DoD.
Thank you both. So you've gone through a long adventure of not only your combat service or your partner's combat service. Tell us a little bit about how you ended up, Atef, leaving the Marine Corps with a discharge. I believe you received, or maybe you can help us understand what type of discharge you received.
So like I said, I served in early 2000s. So I was in Afghanistan for all of 2002, basically. Came out, and I didn't know about PTSD, and so through all the symptoms, I started self-medicating with marijuana and alcohol. I ended up popping positive for marijuana a couple different times, 4 different times, and went through 2 different court-martials. Went through a summary court-martial and a special court-martial, spent about a year in the brig, and received a bad conduct discharge out of the Marine Corps. And that was, again, in 2005. And then after I got discharged, I kept on getting in trouble, kept on self-medicating, didn't really understand PTSD, didn't really have any help or any guidance coming out of the Marine Corps on where to go with it. Didn't really understand what a discharge upgrade would do or anything about that. And I continuously got in trouble until I finally got arrested for carrying a loaded firearm in a public area, and that sent me to seek help. I really understood that I really needed to get some help. I was starting to do some more jail time than getting in fights and other things like that. I ended up finding the vet center in Concord, and I got connected to them, and they put me in touch with a lot of different veterans organizations. First of all, with the County Veteran Services Office, and that's where I finally filed my disability claim in 2007. So about 2-3 years after I got out is when I filed my disability claim with the VA.
Thanks for sharing that with us. If we could back up just a little bit, you mentioned you served in combat, PTSD, untreated, and so it led to some substance abuse issues and an eventual discharge from the Marine Corps of a bad conduct discharge after some time in the brig. What was your feeling leaving the Marine Corps after having served in combat and being a Marine, leaving with a bad conduct discharge? How did that affect you emotionally?
Devastated, completely devastated. You know, my time in service, not only to me was honorable and but in all my records was also. And so coming out, just because I didn't know how to deal with the issues that I was never even presented with mental health issues. I didn't even understand PTSD, didn't know what it was. And for me to be punished for that and kicked out after all my honorable service was devastating, hard to face my friends, my family, even to try to get back up on my feet, knowing that, I went out there uh, and I was suffering from things that I didn't understand and I didn't know. And it just started ruining my life. It really did. It took over, and it devastated my life for a long time, not just mentally, but physically and socially. Lost a lot of friends, a lot of relationships, had problems with my family, had problems holding down a job. Uh, it was a very brutal process.
Yeah, that sounds like went on for several years. And Shannon, you had a partner who experienced a similar situation to Atef. Tell us a little bit about your experience with your partner, Sean.
Sean was a combat veteran Marine who served from 2007 to 2011. He was in the Nowzat Valley in Afghanistan, which was at the time an extremely hostile territory under daily fire. Sean was a machine gunner for his unit, so he was the first line of defense. Tragically, not all of Sean's comrades made it home. He held himself personally responsible for their deaths and saw some pretty horrific things in his time there. When he returned to the States after 6 months in Afghanistan, about 2 weeks post-deployment, Sean had a flashback episode while out with all of his buddies, and ended up running into traffic and getting hit by a car. And he suffered some pretty severe injuries, including a fractured femur, and ended up in a military hospital. It was there that they started Sean on opiates for pain. Sean quickly became addicted to those pain pills. And even after getting out of the hospital and while awaiting a medical discharge that was supposed to happen, his dependence on opiates just continued to increase and spiral out of control, ultimately leading to a he said, she said accusation that Sean attempted to purchase drugs from another Marine or two other Marines. They brought him up on a general court-martial and locked him up for 6 months, the last 6 months of his 4-year contract. Every day while he was locked up, they gave him OxyContin to keep him from going through withdrawals, and they gave him a bad conduct discharge and stripped him of all his benefits and even his right to call himself a veteran, and they kicked him out. And that pill habit became a heroin addiction, which is common amongst opiate addicts, to escalate. And Sean spent the next 7 years homeless, in and out of rehab, in and out of jail, unable to get a job, severe PTSD, addiction, and mental health issues, all caused and then exacerbated by his time in service. And Sean and I met 4 years ago, a little over 4 years ago, and the 4 years that I was with him, he tried over and over and over and over again to get sober, to get clean, to be able to function, but without access to any benefits, despite repeated attempts to access those. Sean just continued to spiral downward. So I'm here with for Sean, it's all what if. What if that BCD on his DD-214 didn't become Sean's scarlet letters that followed him around his entire life? What if he had access to the wonderful resources out there for our men and women in the military? And Sean ultimately wandered out of detox back in November of 2020 against medical advice, and he ended up approaching someone, a truck driver, and it wasn't a violent approach. He was just out of his mind, and this man was scared, and he stabbed Sean twice in the heart and left him there. And Sean lingered for about 5 months. And in March of this year, we took Sean off of life support. And on March 24th, 2021, he passed away.
Very tragic story. And what I'm hearing is, in both circumstances, the problems existed in the military, primarily related to combat service and untreated PTSD. But the problems that existed after leaving the military with the discharge, in these instances, a bad conduct discharge, really continued a cycle in which the veterans have been unable to live successfully. Do you think, Atef or Shannon, that the military could have done more in these circumstances to recognize PTSD, or at least consider the circumstances in which either veteran ended up, I guess, breaking the law and being discharged from the military?
Absolutely. I feel when they come home, there was no decompression. There was no reassessment of their mental status after being, in such a horrible place under such terrifying conditions day in and day out for 6 months. They have to tap into animalistic instincts to survive and protect each other and defend their country. And then they come home and they're back into society, and they no longer, whatever coping mechanisms they had are gone. And for that not to be recognized, and Atif, I think you touched on it earlier, the approach is punitive rather than, okay, this is a problem. He's clearly a problem. Something's wrong. We need to get help. And, when the Hagel memorandum came out, that was kind of Senator Hagel's theme was kind of to the military was, you broke it, you fix it. You can't just kick them out. And if you can't kick them out with diagnosis of PTSD, then they changed it to behavioral problem, or, they got cagey with the language. And so, yeah, I think had early intervention and, automatic reassessment and psychological evaluation when somebody returns from combat deployment had been in place, then maybe Sean's story wouldn't be a what if story.
Yeah. Well, we're just getting started in this conversation, this very important conversation. I want to thank our guests, Atef and Shannon, who will continue to join us into the following segments. But you can join us as well, because when we come back, we will add guests who help veterans upgrade their discharge status and examine the process. But first, we pay tribute to an Air Force colonel still serving his country in this month's Shadowbox. Tonight's Shadowbox belongs to Colonel R. Ryan Schmidt-Messer. Colonel Messer is the Deputy Director of Plans, Programs, and Requirements, Headquarters Air Combat Command at Langley Air Force Base in Virginia. He earned his commission in 1997 after graduating from Louisiana State University. He is a master navigator with more than 2,000 flying hours and has supported combat operations, Northern Watch, Enduring Freedom, Noble Eagle, and Iraqi Freedom. His primary aircraft is the F-15. His awards include the Defense Superior Service Medal, Bronze Star, and the Legion of Merit. We honor his continued service. We are talking discharge upgrades. Want to be part of our conversation? Love to have you. You might have some comments, you might have some questions. You might be in a situation just like Atef or like Shannon's partner, Sean. If you want to be part of this conversation with a question or comment, call us 313-1170, send us a message through Facebook at Veterans Voices 1, or email us veteransvoices@ContraCostaTV.org. In fact, we do have a question from our audience that we'll get to in just a second here. But first, we want to talk about the process of upgrading discharge statuses. I want to welcome to the show Tom Wilshire, VA Management Analyst, and Maureen Mo Cedar, the Legal Director for Swords to Plowshares. Welcome both.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
So we're going to shift this conversation towards what the military and what the VA can do to help veterans in the situation that Sean and Atef found themselves. Now, obviously, the military has already discharged this veteran with a bad conduct discharge or a other than honorable discharge, or maybe even a general under honorable. And so there's things we can do to elicit the help from the DoD or from the VA, and both of you are the experts. So we're going to get into a technical conversation here, and I'd like to start with you, Mo, because you represent Swords to Plowshares, and you help veterans like Atef or Sean to apply for discharge upgrades from their branch of service. Tell us a little bit about how that works.
Yeah, sure. So discharge upgrades, it's a process whereby a former service member can petition their branch of service at the Department of Defense to have them correct or change their military record, specifically their DD-214, to reflect a better discharge status than the one that was given to them at separation. So it's an application process, and they submit the application to their service branch, and they usually include, in addition to the application, a copy of that DD-214 that has that bad conduct or other than honorable discharge, as well as other supporting information or evidence that will help convince the DoD that today, despite the misconduct that happened previously, that former service member deserves a better discharge status or an honorable discharge status today. And if they are successful in that process, the DoD will then reissue either a new DD-214 or sometimes a DD-215 that has that honorable discharge or better discharge status than the one they got when they separated.
So in order to do this, Mo, does a veteran need to come to an organization like Swords to be successful? Are they able to do this on their own? What do you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, not a lot of people have access to free legal services. You know, we're one organization in San Francisco. There are certainly county veteran service offices, of course, around the state that also help folks with this process too. So if you do have access to a representative or an advocate who is familiar with this process, of course, I would recommend that, because they're going to have that expertise and that information that's going to be helpful for you. But folks do go about, doing this themselves. And there are a lot of resources available online. We have a self-help guide on our website. There's other organizations like the National Veterans Legal Services Program in DC and other organizations that provide assistance and sort of self-help guidelines on their website about how to navigate this process on their own. But yeah, I would say if you can find somebody to assist you, always recommended.
And before we get into the character discharge part, because that's an important separate piece that the VA handles, Mo, what would you say is the likeliness or the common outcome in the process of requesting a discharge upgrade? Can a veteran go from a bad conduct discharge to an honorable and have their full VA benefits restored? Or can a veteran expect to have a discharge upgraded to the next higher level, a bad conduct discharge to other than honorable, for example? Or what would a veteran typically expect?
That's a great question. So what we have seen and what the statistics bear out is that it's very difficult to go from a other than honorable bad conduct or dishonorable discharge all the way up to an honorable discharge. You need some pretty compelling facts and some pretty strong evidence in order to go from there to honorable. But it isn't, and it's more likely that they'll be able to get perhaps a general under honorable conditions discharge. And as Tom will talk about in a minute, getting somebody from that bad conduct or that OTH discharge up to general, that is a discharge status that is binding on VA and would open the door to VA benefits if they had that general under honorable. The one exception to that is GI Bill benefits. And I would say the chances of success are not great. This is a very difficult process to succeed in. The DoD operates under an assumption that the government got it right the first time, and you really have a big hurdle to get over in order to be successful in this process. But in our experience, and again, statistically, what we're seeing is that those who have the ability to show that there's a link between the mental health struggles that began while they were in service and the misconduct have a much higher likelihood of success. So that's, exactly Sean's situation and Atef's situation where you have seen combat and you're coming back and you're struggling with substance use, or you have an injury in service, and you're being medicated with a medication that is now obviously, well documented and known to cause addiction issues. you experienced rape or sexual assault in the service, and then you had a decline in your work performance after following that trauma. If you can show that link between mental health and the misconduct that led to that less than honorable discharge, and you know document that in your application, you're really upping your chances of success. And obviously that's not everyone's fact pattern and situation. And so, you know, I don't mean to sound discouraging. You certainly can prevail without that, but just so everyone knows, that's kind of the cases that we're seeing are leading to successful outcomes for our clients.
Yeah, thanks, Mo. And I want to take us to Tom Wilkshire, who's, again, joining us from the VA, because in addition to the process of asking the military to consider a discharge upgrade, the VA separately can make their own character of discharge determination. Tom, tell us a little bit about the VA's efforts to help veterans like Atef and Sean.
Sure. The VA has a separate process, one that's probably generally a bit more favorable to applicants and discharge reviews, called character of discharge determinations, also known as admin decisions. And they're made to ascertain whether or not a service member who received an undesirable discharge meets eligibility to be granted access to VA benefits. So if we determine that a claimant is eligible, their service will be considered honorable for VA purposes, and in many cases will be eligible for benefits associated with service connection. But, you know, it's important to be clear that although the VA may deem a veteran's service honorable for VA purposes, it's not a change in a veteran's actual discharge from service. So we don't issue new DD-214s or letters describing a veteran's service as honorable. That requires a discharge upgrade. But it's worth mentioning that, you know, again, the requirements to be deemed honorable for VA purposes through a VA administrative decision, you know, it's generally a more forgiving process than discharge review boards. And sometimes we take a look at the evidence and determine that an administrative decision isn't even necessary. For example, you know, if you're a veteran and you have multiple terms of service and you know, at least one of them is honorable, and the condition you're claiming service connection for happened in the honorable period of service, we might be able to just grant benefits without addressing the unfavorable period of service.
Now, Mo mentioned that a general under honorable restores all eligibility for benefits except the education benefits, like the post 9/11 GI Bill. Does a character of discharge differ from that? Is a honorable for VA purposes determination, does that restore eligibility for education benefits?
I would have to double check to be sure, but I believe the regulations are pretty strict about listing service requirements that are honorable for the education benefits.
Yeah, I can add to that. The situation that Tom just mentioned, where you have an earlier period of service. So that's, you know, for example, you know, you enlisted for 4 years, and like in your 3rd or 4th year, you re-up for another 4 years, and you end up, you know, in total serving 6 years. But in that 6th year, there's some misconduct that leads to an other than honorable discharge. You can get GI Bill benefits for that first full 4-year enlistment that you served without misconduct. And like you mentioned, you know, you can get service connection for that. But if you served, you know, a 4-year enlistment, and in your 3rd year you had that misconduct and you got out with an other than honorable discharge, if you get a character of discharge determination that's successful, you don't get GI Bill benefits. If you go through the discharge upgrade process and you get from that other than honorable up to a general, you still don't get GI Bill. It's only if you get from you get a new DD-214 through that DOD's discharge upgrade process that says fully honorable, then you would get your GI Bill.
So it restores some benefits, but not all benefits. And that, as I understand, there's even some bars to a character of discharge determination. So some circumstances, give us an example, Tom, of maybe an instance where the VA cannot determine the veteran's service to be honorable, even if the narrative fits the desire for the VA to do so.
Right. I'd say the most common bar that we come across are discharges that are the result of a general court-martial, as opposed to a summary or a special court-martial. Those are generally a very strict bar that are hard, that's hard to overcome. There's some more obscure ones like conscientious objectors, officers resigning for the good of the service. I'd say those are the most common instances that completely bar you from VA benefits.
So those are statutory, regulatory bars. Get into a little bit, as Mo did, though, how a veteran can present their case to the VA so that they can be successful. We just got about 2 minutes here.
So the first step is to submit a claim. The VA will notice that you had a unfavorable or an undesirable discharge, and we'll start a due process period, and we'll send a letter, explaining the process, explaining how you can submit evidence, good examples of evidence to submit. We'll give you the option to schedule a hearing if that's what you'd like to do, where you can discuss in person with a veteran service representative context. So it's just verbal evidence that ends up being transcribed and submitted to the record for consideration. So the first step is simply submitting a claim. And, character discharge determinations can be complicated. So we definitely recommend, that veterans get assistance from attorneys or veteran service organizations to really help explain their cases so it can be clear and pointed when a veteran service representative makes the determination.
I want to address a question here from our viewer. Let's talk about survivors' benefits, because so far we've talked about veterans' benefits. How does a survivor go through the process of determining the veteran's eligibility for their own sake of benefits? Can the surviving spouse apply for a character of discharge determination or a discharge upgrade so that they may receive benefits? In the instance of Shannon and Sean, if they were married when Sean died, would there still be an opportunity for a surviving spouse like Shannon to apply for benefits?
That's an excellent question. I'm honestly not too sure how that scenario would work. I could get back to you. I don't know if the discharge can be upgraded. If that were the case, then I imagine there would be an opportunity to have survivor benefits restored.
Yeah, I can speak to that situation. We've had clients in that situation at Swords. So the next of kin or the surviving spouse could certainly petition on the person's behalf for a discharge upgrade posthumously, and the arguments would look similarly. And if they were seeking survivor's benefits at the VA, the process of that character of discharge determination would be very similar to if the veteran themselves were submitting an application. So you would submit for death pension or DIC benefits, and the veteran's situation would go through the character of discharge determination process, meaning their records would be reviewed and any evidence to support that would be submitted as if the veteran were still alive. And if the veteran was deemed honorable for VA purposes, then the underlying survivor's benefits claim would then be adjudicated. And you can, for example, with DIC, that the hook for that benefit is service connection, and proving that the person passed away from a service-connected disability or was highly rated for that. And all of that actually can be proven posthumously as well. So if the veteran passed away from a self-inflicted gunshot wound and they were struggling with PTSD, and although they had a bad conduct discharge, they weren't service connected for PTSD at the time of their passing, that can get proven after the fact in order to establish that their wife or husband, is entitled to DIC based on the fact that they passed away from a service connected condition.
Great.
Obviously needing to prove the connection between the suicide and PTSD, but yeah, that's that's how that would play out.
Well, thank you both. This has been a very technical aspect of our show, but we will come back and mix in more of the stories with these opportunities to apply for discharge upgrades and character discharge determinations. Real quickly, I want to mention Veterans Day is coming up, and I want to invite all veterans to get out in their communities and participate in Veterans Day events, such as in Walnut Creek. 11 a.m. on November 11th. They're having a ceremony, and many other organizations throughout the community will be having presentation or ceremonies for Veterans Day as well. When we return, our panel will conclude their conversation. But first, Veterans Voices correspondent Stephen Burchick talks with members of Blue Angels in this month's A Vet on the Street.
I'm Stephen Burchick here with Veterans Voices, and we're here at the USS Potomac, Franklin Roosevelt's favorite ship. And later on, we'll be out on San Francisco Bay watching the Blue Angels perform. We've got a question for some visitors today, and the question is, how do the Blue Angels support the mission of the U.S. Navy?
Hi, Steve. It's a pleasure to be here at Jack London Square and boarding the USS Potomac. And it's wonderful to have an opportunity to speak with you and your organization, Veterans Voices. Thank you very much. You know, the Blue Angels, we're celebrating our 75th year since 1946. I'm Steve Foley. I'm a retired Navy captain. Had a wonderful opportunity to fly with the Blue Angels back in 2005 and 2006 as the flight leader. The Blue Angels are comprised of 130 approximately men and women, professionals of the United States Navy and the United States Marine Corps, representing the Naval Service. And they represent the over 800,000 active duty men and women, the civilians that all support the Naval Service across the globe. You might well know that the mission of the United States Navy's demonstration squadron, the Blue Angels, is to represent all of the service members across the Navy and the Marine Corps that are working very, very difficultly and very in a committed fashion across the globe. Of course, we hope to showcase the pride, the professionalism, the precision of the United States Naval Services.
Hello, my name's George Dahm. I was the flight leader and commanding officer of the Blue Angels in 1997 and 98. And it was a real privilege and honor to represent all the amazing men and women out on the front lines of freedom in the Navy Marine Corps team. And that's the Blue Angels mission, is to tell the story of the active duty Navy Marine Corps to Americans who wouldn't otherwise get to know about the Navy and Marine Corps. When I was on the team, we had 2 wonderful years flying here in San Francisco. And my first year, after we got done with the show downtown, we went and did a surprise flyover of a 49ers game against the Rams. And so if you want to see a video of that, if you'll Google John Madden and the Blue Angels, you'll get to see our surprise. And let me tell you, John Madden saw us when we came over the lights. Are working directly right or left, depending on their position, in order to stay in position. If you're a formation pilot, you know how difficult this is. This is your Kodak moment as the Blue Angels approach Alcatraz with the Delta breakup. We call the fan break.
That was remarkable. Welcome back. We're talking about the need and process for discharge upgrades. We want to welcome you to contact us with questions, and we've had a few, or comments. Call us at 925-313-1170. Send us a message through Facebook at Veterans Voices 1, or email us veteransvoices@ContraCostaTV.org. So we got all 4 of our panelists back again tonight. We have Mo and Tom, and we have Atef and Shannon. And we've talked about the stories and we've talked about the technical programs that help veterans. And I want to kind of put those two together and find out some of the ways that veterans' lives have been improved as a result of the Discharge Upgrade program or the Character of Discharge program. Atef, you had mentioned in the first segment, you actually went through the process of applying for service connection with the VA and received a Character of Discharge determination. What did that do for you, and how? Not only what did it do for you, how did it change how you felt in regards to your military service?
Yeah, first of all, it definitely opened up compensation in medical and dental, and then I guess the biggest one would be medical and dental. Definitely opened me up to, which I hadn't had since I got out of the Marine Corps. It also gave me the compensation, which earlier when Mo was mentioning and Tom also mentioning that, when you do get a character of service upgrade through the VA's eyes, one thing you don't get is educational benefits. So that compensation helped me to pay for some of my education. That definitely, so those are some of the benefits that definitely helped me out. And that, overall, that just changes everything. I was going through multiple jobs, couldn't hold down jobs. I was struggling with a lot of things. So that just gives a lot of security. And it makes it that somebody actually understands that the service and what had happened, and didn't just like sweep me aside. I think a lot of veterans who've had negative discharges after, combat service, definitely feel that way, that, they've been swept aside, and that, it didn't matter about the honorable service. It just matters about the one or two things that happened, for them to have a negative discharge when, regardless of the hundreds of things that they might have done to have honorable service.
Yeah, tonight's topic is restored honor, and what you're saying is essentially there's no longer this big spotlight or lens on these blemishes, for lack of a better word. There's more of a spotlight on your honorable service, that you served in Afghanistan, that you served your country honorably. And did you feel like that restored a little bit of positive emotions about how you feel about your experience in the Marine Corps?
It definitely did. Because through the VA, definitely it's a veterans organization. It's the Veterans Administration. So, with a lot of veterans in there, I don't think I've ever had a conversation with a veteran that talked about, what your discharge was. So being linked in with the VA and different veterans organizations definitely made it feel a lot more honorable, and a lot more that there was, the process of being more honorable. I believe once my discharge is upgraded fully through the DOD, that's one of the biggest things is having the government recognize and the Marine Corps recognize that the service was honorable. So
yeah, thank you. And I want to come back to a question that was actually asked earlier. Atef, one of our viewers wanted to know, other than the military and other than the VA, were there other organizations that you feel like helped you in this process of getting your honorable determination and getting your VA benefits?
Definitely. The Vet Center, I know that there's vet centers in a lot of different communities. That's definitely an organization that helped me out. I had contact with the Order of the Purple Heart, Swords to Plowshares. I dealt with Swords to Plowshares too. They've helped me out. There's a lot of nonprofit organizations and a lot of veterans groups that are out there that if you link in with can definitely give you access to not just different resources, but at the same time with other veterans that are not only gone through it or are going through it, or that can help you go through the process in itself, whether it's support or physically helping you go through some of the steps that are needed.
Okay. Shannon, I want to come back to you if I may, and feel free anyone else to jump in as well. But if Sean would have been able to access a character of discharge determination and that would open the door to VA benefits, where do you think Sean's life would be today? Would it be any different of an outcome after he left the military?
Yeah, Sean had Tom touched on it. Sean didn't just have a BCD, he had a BCD as a result of a general court martial. Um, you know, the general court martial for something like, hey, this guy tried to buy drugs from me, doesn't make any sense to me. I feel like they're not on the same level. But with Sean, the earlier we could have gotten to him, the better. The longer it dragged on, the longer doors, he contacted lawyers. We spoke to different people. And as soon as they heard BCD in conjunction with general court martial, they're like, so it was this constant, rejection at every turn. It wasn't until the Sparta Project that was Sean's first yes. They were the first organization to unequivocally and instantly welcome him and treat him with the honor and respect that he deserved, because Sean's time in combat was honorable. He served his country honorably and with tremendous bravery, and it was afterwards. And I just feel that if a veteran serves in combat with honor, short of doing something horrific, murder, rape, something terrible, their benefits should remain intact. So I would like to think that the sooner, if something like that had been available to him in the last several years, that maybe it would have made a difference. But with him, we just don't know. And I want his story to not be I know his story is one of thousands, so I hope it changes somebody else's outcome.
Yeah, we don't want to see more circumstances like Sean, not only on the show here, but anywhere, walking into county veteran service offices or ending up on the streets homeless or unemployed. We want to be able to help our veterans, particularly our combat veterans, as you mentioned. Mo and Tom, can you give us a couple examples, along with Atef, of how veterans' lives have been improved as a result of these opportunities to upgrade their discharge?
Yeah, I mean, we've really focused on serving those with less than honorable discharges at Swords. So we get a lot of clients and inquiries from folks who are in this exact situation, and been able to advocate on behalf of many veterans, successfully, getting both a discharge upgrade and COD. And it really, I just want to sort of corroborate what Shannon was saying. Like, Sean is one story, but it's a story that I have heard many, many times I've been doing this work since 2014, so a few years now, and that is the very sort of common, typical situation where somebody has served honorably in war, in combat, and come home, and their mind and body have reacted to that trauma as it is intended to, with hypervigilance and sleep disturbance and anxiety and depression, and all of those things are not conducive to military law and military life. And they are not, for a number of reasons, military culture, their own pride, whatever, not getting the mental health treatment that they are needing while they're still on active duty. And the misconduct happens, and that's when they get kicked out. And so many are, the VA's hands are tied in many situations in terms of what they can do. And the DoD, it's very hard to get an upgrade. So it's a very tricky situation. But when you are able to get through this process successfully, in Atef's situation, I'm so happy to hear that that's what happened for him, because it can mean, like he said, full medical benefits, $3,000+ potentially every month in tax-free income, and all of those things that are going to solve so many problems in your life and reduce your stress, because you're able to pay your rent, you're able to pay your child support, you're able to go to a doctor, take care of your mental health, all of those things that are so life-altering.
Right. Atef, we just have about 60 seconds. Final words for any veteran out there who maybe was in your situation. What would you tell that veteran to do in a few sentences?
I'll tell them definitely go through the process. It's well worth it. I'd say get help. Real 3 basic things: get in touch with some veterans organizations, veterans groups, find some time, try to volunteer in the community, whether it's sports, church, and if you can, get some education, get into, show some progress in the community that you're actually being, trying to better yourself and trying to help the community out, for sure.
Yeah.
I think those 3 things will definitely help out.
Thank you, and thank you to Shannon, thank you to Mo and Tom, thank you to all of our guests tonight. This concludes this conversation, this brief conversation. Lots more to talk about, and we'll hope to come back to this again in the future. But we hope that we shed some light on the need and the process of discharge upgrades. Please stay tuned to hear a Veteran's Voice. This month, Veterans Voices correspondent Stephen Burchick talks with Army veteran Bill Green.
I'm Stephen Burchick with Veterans Voices, and this segment is A Veteran's Voice. Our guest today is Bill Green. Bill, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, Steve. I appreciate it.
Okay. Bill, can you tell us a little bit about your military experience?
May of 1967, I tried to join the military, tried to join the Army, and I was refused because I had asthma. 2 months later, though, I got drafted into the Army. And the reason they refused me is they told me an asthmatic couldn't survive in Vietnam. As soon as I got drafted, I was sent to Fort Bliss, Texas, and there I volunteered Infantry Airborne, and they sent me to Vietnam.
Understand you got a couple medals, a couple you didn't prefer not to have gotten?
I got 2 Bronze Stars and 2 Purple Hearts. Okay. So, yeah, standing in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Okay. Understand that you were also one of the early members of Vietnam Veterans Diablo Valley. Can you describe what the group was like at the beginning and how it's changed over the years?
I was invited to join the Vietnam Vets. I think my first meeting was in March of '91, and I believe they had a meeting before that. So I'm not one of the original guys at the first meeting. What was it like then? Tony Roma's Rib House. We'd be there for drinks, great ribs. And it was a small bunch of us to start with, 20, 30 guys, and the numbers grew. At the beginning, it was mostly just a social group, and that's all we did. Some of the things we do, from Memorial Day service at Oak Hill Park, Walk of Honor, with Phillips 66. This is all in the month of May. The Vietnam Vets also have Operation Santa Claus that we do, which is every December, that we bring in military families and veteran families.
And what is does the group have a motto or a saying that kind of represents the theme of the group or the mission of the group?
Probably the most important one is welcome home, because Vietnam vets never heard that phrase when they came home. And
I understand the parade each year in Danville, 4th of July, is a way to give recognition to some of the vets.
Vietnam vets marched in the parade from '91 on. And it was interesting, those of us that were in the '91 parade, we were wearing blue pants, white shoes, white shirt with our logo on it, and a white hat. Obviously, you could tell Norm Mahalik, our president, was a Navy guy. He dressed us that way. But when we marched down the street with a banner saying Vietnam Vets Diablo Valley, people rose up and cheered us, and we did not know how to take it. Seriously, you looked around at the guys next to you. I know I did, and there was quite a few guys around me, had tears in our eyes. We did not ever expect that to happen. It was the first time we were ever welcomed home.
Bill, I understand you had a pretty successful career as an electrician. Can you describe how you got into that and maybe an unusual incident or something that stands out?
I got into it when I came back from Nam. I'd always wanted to be, I'd gone to college, studied criminology, wanted to become an officer, a police officer. Unfortunately, after I came back from Nam, I had no great desire to be a police officer anymore. And it was by chance I took the test for the apprenticeship for electricians in San Francisco, Local 6, and I ended up becoming an electrician. I did this until 2002. It was a great career. I enjoyed it. It ranged from building high-rises My last third of my career as an electrician, I did trade shows and concerts.
What were a couple of the concerts you remember?
Carlos Santana, what a great show he put on. Ray Charles, great show. Great sense of humor. I enjoyed Ray Charles tremendously.
Understand you also provide the power or electricity for East Bay Stand Down.
Stand Down started, Vietnam vets started East Bay Stand Down, and 1999 was our first stand down. And we did it in 2000, and from that point on, it became every other year. So every even number year, we do East Bay Stand Down. I did the power for the first stand down, supplying the material for the electrical, and distributing the power throughout the stand down. Now, East Bay Stand Down, you've got up to 400 homeless. Let's say it's in the 300 number. And we bring them in for 4 days. And during those 4 days, we give them every service you can imagine. You start off with showers and clean clothes, haircuts, get all the hygiene going. But you also have medical there for them. You have legal there for them. You have counseling there for them. You have the VA there for them.
I also understand you've been heavily involved with the Concord Vet Center. Can you tell us a little bit about how that program works and what your involvement has been?
I first went to the Vet Center in 2002. That's when I was diagnosed with PTSD. And when I went to the Vet Center, I found the support and the counseling that I needed. And it's counseling that I still take part in today, every Friday. I have a counseling session along with about 9 or 10 other vets. In 2005, myself and probably about half a dozen of us total combat vets were asked to be mentors out of the Vet Center and try to help the young veterans coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq. And we were mentors. We weren't counselors. Okay. And the best definition for a mentor is you got to have big ears.
I also understand you're involved with an annual program called the Duck Club.
Retreat.
Okay. You're not collecting wooden ducks or something?
No, we're not collecting. I'm a member of a duck club in Northern California, and our members have turned around and have opened up the doors at my request to allow me to bring in 20 or more veterans up to the duck club. 2 guys to a room. My membership opens up the rooms and to accommodate the group for a weekend. For 3 days, we're going to feed you. We're going to let you shoot trap. We have a swimming pool. The whole thing is it's vets with vets, and there's no rules over that 3-day period. The only rules I have for the guys and the gals is that there's no drugs and there's no alcohol. We have bonfires at night. The guys will sit around and the gals will sit around, tell stories. It is extremely important for veterans to be with other veterans for their own well-being.
Well, Bill, thank you for sharing that story with us and the rest of your career, your personal experiences, your volunteer experiences. You've had an impactful life, both for yourself and others. Thank you for sharing that with us today on A Veteran's Voice.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed our conversation with Bill Green. What a great man he is. We will have resources for those seeking discharge upgrades a little later. Now we want to look at the lighter side of military news by visiting our own Corporal Schmuckatelli of the 1st Civ Div down in the Veterans Voices news bunker.
Oh, good evening. I'm your host with the most, Corporal Schmuckatelli, yet with another episode that will knock your socks off. Yeah, you're probably wondering why I'm not dressed in dress blues, even though it's the Marine Corps birthday. Mainly because of my arm, and also because I'm really freaking fat. I had to trace myself in the Corps, but I don't regret being fat. So what is the Marine Corps birthday? For those who are not initiated in the Marine Corps, the Marine Corps birthday is a time to get dressed up in our wonderful blues outfits or uniforms and to honor traditions and colorful history by getting absolutely wasted. We have traditions like the oldest Marine in attendance cuts a pizza cake for the youngest Marine in attendance, and then they eat that piece of cake. Luckily for me, I am the oldest and youngest Marine in attendance tonight, and I get to have my cake and eat it too, so you guys. I'm gonna cut some cake. You know, this actually brings to mind what General Mattis said once. He said, always carry a knife because you never know if you'll be cutting into someone's throat or cutting some cake. So sadly tonight we're gonna be cutting some cake, but that can soon change. Maybe let's go ahead and look at some wonderful quotes from General Mattis. I come in peace, I didn't bring artillery, but I'm pleading with you, with tears in my eyes, if you with me, I will kill all of you. Be polite, be professional, and have a plan to kill everybody you meet. Rah! Hey Marines, never forget, whether you're active or not, where you come from, who you are, and what you learned. It is your moral and ethical obligation to kill people and blow shit up. Thank you, good night, and fuck all the other branches. Happy birthday to me. That tastes familiar. Tastes like compliance all. Nathan, why?
Thank you for tuning into the show tonight. We hope you got a laugh out of this month's Scuttlebutt, and we have shed a little light on the subject of discharge upgrades. Here are some resources to help in that journey. The Department of Veterans Affairs is a good place to start. Find them at va.gov and look for Records section. Get started at the Department of Defense by visiting defense.gov and do a search for Discharge Upgrades. Swords to Plowshares supplies veterans with legal assistance in their quest for a discharge upgrade. Go to swords-to-plowshares.org or call 415-727-8387 to find out more. The annual Contra Costa County Veterans Day ceremony will take place on Tuesday, November 9th at 11 a.m. Tune in to CCTV to watch live. There will be a pop-up museum honoring the contributions of diverse ethnic groups to the Allied offensive in World War II from November 11th to the 14th at the Veterans Memorial Building in Danville. To learn more, contact info@stephenburchick.com or call 925-998-9433. Hospice of East Bay will present a Tree of Lights to honor veterans on November 13th at 5:30 p.m. in Martinez. Go to hospiceeastbay.org for more information. On Tuesday, December 7th at 3:45 p.m., there will be a ceremonial lighting of the Mount Diablo beacon to honor Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day. Tune into CCTV to watch the event live. For more information, go to savemountdiablo.org. Veterans Voices is brought to you in part by contributions from the Diablo Valley Veterans Foundation, dedicated to helping veterans near you. American Legion Post 246, honoring the tradition of the American Legion in Danville. To rewatch tonight's episode, check back on our homepage later this week or check your cable provider's schedule for rebroadcast times. You can also rewatch this episode and many others on our YouTube channel, Veterans Voices of Contra Costa, so be sure to subscribe. Our next show will air on Monday, December 13th at 7 p.m. It'll be our Best of 2021 show, where we highlight our top moments of the year, so you don't want to miss it. To all of our veterans and their families, thanks for watching and have a great evening.